So the Forge of the Chaos Dwarves launches in just under 24 hours, and that means that I can finally give you my thoughts and opinions on this DLC, and boy oh boy, do I have some thoughts and opinions about this DLC. Now there's no way to talk about my thoughts about this without talking about the large elephant in the very empty room that is the massive price increase for the content seemingly decrease. But first let's go through the DLC and all it contains for the low price of 50% of the cost of the base game. Also, just before we get into this, I'm obviously partnered with CA in terms of they give me early access to the DLC, and that's about it. They don't give me anything else, they just give me early access, and then I can post stuff early, which is beneficial for the channel. But aside from that, they don't give me, or they haven't given me anything else for this DLC. Obviously, everything in this video is my own opinion. This is not an attack on anyone at CA, so don't go harassing people over video games. That's pretty cringe, not based. Okay, let's get into the video. Also, yes, I have a spot on the end of my nose. Let's not talk about it. So, the content in this DLC. It's pretty damn good. I can't really lie to you about that. Honestly, I don't have a lot of problems with the actual content of the DLC because, as far as it goes, the Chaos Dwarves are a ton of fun to play as. They have loads of mechanics. They have a very engaging campaign. We have to be constantly moving. Their unit roster is fairly large and a lot of fun, as well as pretty damn powerful. And now, obviously, I'm coming at this from a mainly single-player campaign-based perspective, but I actually did play a tiny bit of multiplayer with Great Book of Grudges, which you can check out on DavPlay's channel since he had some issues with the early access. And when we play multiplayer, there seems to be a lot of fun there too. They've got a really expensive roster, so you have to kind of pick your best units and then either fill it up with a lot of chaff or have just a very small but very elite army and then try and fight off whatever the enemy throws at you. Now, with all that being said, they're not free of flaws because, no faction is. But in particular, with these guys, there are some things that are pretty glaring. Now, the main one is how unique their faction mechanics are. Now, some of them are bespoke. The industrial economy, for example, is completely unique to them with all the outposts and the factories and the way that you have all these different resources to manage in a production chain. And it's a lot of fun, and I definitely appreciate that. And it's a really great and unique mechanic that is a ton of fun to play. But aside from that, they have a lot of things that are essentially just ripped from other factions and then given a slight makeover for the Chaos Dwarves. Convoys, for example, are pretty much just the exact same as the Cathay mechanic, only now they're a little bit different with what exactly you can trade and what exactly you're going to get in return. Also, side note, in my opinion, every faction should be using this convoy mechanic as their trade routes. I think trade agreements shouldn't give you free money because that's kind of boring and not really interactive, and instead it should just open it up so that you can send off trade convoys with other factions, especially if you are a trade faction like the Empire or the High Elves, for example. This would make it a lot more engaging, especially for raiding factions, because you could attack all these caravans and get all the gold that they seem to be transporting, and all of that for the low price of just adding a bunch more armies to the map, which I'm sure wouldn't add any lag to this very stable game. Anywho, aside from convoys, labor is essentially just the slavery mechanic from the Dark Elves, the Hellforge is basically the Oath Gold Forge from the Dwarves, and the Tower of Tsar, okay, it's kind of new unique. I mean, we've had Lord positions before and Council positions, but they've not really been exactly like the Tower of Tsar, the different tier system, so I'll let you off for that one. That one's decently unique. And who can forget the best mechanic in the entire in the entire game, the hero that replaced a legendary lord in this DLC, the man, the myth, the legendary hero, Gordo's Butt Sniffer. If you can't tell from his introduction and the wording that I put in the campaign guide, if you managed to catch that, this guy is about the most generic hero we've had that has been sold to us as a legendary hero, especially in a paid piece of content. Sure, Gottschalk and Felix are a little bit shit, but they're free, so who really cares? Codil from the Sexy Tree Lady faction, he's so much better than this guy. He's an outstanding battler, he's a great caster. He might not have the most unique skills and unique anything in the world, but at least he's super powerful. And Ariel from the Wood Elves, she was from a paid Lord pack, not even a race pack, a Lord pack, and she is one of the most unique heroes in the game. She has a wide array of spells, she has a very unique skill tree, and same with Lord Croak. But this guy, he's a Goblin Assassin hero that doesn't really do anything unique on the campaign map. In battle, he is a mediocre fighter at best, and beyond the mid-game, he's basically going to do nothing against anything that has any armor whatsoever. The only thing that he has going for him that makes him a unique legendary hero is the fact that he has skills in his skill tree that can buff hobgoblins. And the best part about all of this is unless you are leveling him like an absolute psycho, we're talking level 20, by turn 5, you're going to get no use out of these unique skills. You are encouraged to get rid of hobgoblins as soon as possible because, let's be honest, they're just worse units. You want to be using the actual Chaos Dwarf units because they're so much more elite. Yes, they're more expensive, but they are so much better. Now, if the game was a little bit harder, it might be a bit more relevant because you could use these hobgoblins later into the game, and I'm sure on legendary difficulty that might be the case, but on normal, the most popular difficulty in the game, the one that the majority of the player base plays, I'm not the best player in the world. I don't make any secret about that. I'm not too touchy about it. it's whatever. I had an easy time racking up thousands upon thousands of armaments and having basically armies comprised of literally whatever units I wanted. I could have an entire full stack of the firebonds if I really wanted to, with the amount of armaments that you can create into the mid and late game. And so, why would I ever use hobgoblins? And so, Gorda's Butt Sniffer is basically useless outside of the early game, and yeah, he's useless. He's a terrible legendary hero. He's extremely disappointing. We promised he'd be able to replace Lord, and he simply doesn't. He has a terribly easy quest, and I get this, so you unlock him early so that you can get some use out of him, but to be honest, by the time you've got him, you've kind of outlived his usefulness already, because you're not going to have enough time to get all the levels, because by the time you've recruited enough hobgoblin units to trigger his quest and activate it, a one-step quest for a legendary hero. Really? Really? That's what we're getting? A one-step quest? I mean, Lord Croak has a unique quest line for basically everyone that lasts a good majority of the campaign. Ariel has a unique quest of an intense battle. Gorda's, you just recruit some hobgoblins and he appears. And I suppose that brings us to the second part of this review, and it's a section I like to call the bullshit. Now, I've already made a video about the price increase and potential causes for it and all that, so if you want to watch that, then you can check it out, because I'm not going to retread too much of that stuff here. But this entire DLC has been under a foggy cloud as black and murky as the ones coming out of the Black Fortress. Oh, side complaint, by the way, while I'm talking about it, siege maps, the unique siege maps that we've got, 2 of them, they're essentially just reskins. And I know that most of the new siege maps that we got with Warhammer 3, because to be fair, they did redo all the siege maps, are essentially just reskins of each other for the most part. But, you know, you'd think if they weren't making a 4th Legendary Lord, then they might at least be able to make some new and unique looking, feeling, playing campaign maps. I digress. In the run-up to this DLC, CA staff told us that these 3 Legendary Lords would be so unique and so different that they would make up for there not being 4, and that these 3 would be as different as 1,000. Alright, I'm getting a bit dramatic, but you know what I'm saying. They rescinded the comment that said that they're all unique, and then we get into game, and not only are they not all unique with different mechanics, they're nothing new. They made out like it was going to be some groundbreaking new way and set the trend of how all Legendary Lords into the future would be made. And what did we get? Different campaign effects, different Lord effects, and a different Legendary Lord. No unique mechanics for any of them. Nothing unique at all. The only difference that you can tell when you are playing them is basically the Legendary Lord. Because let's be honest, the campaign effects, while they might be nice, don't really make that much of a difference. It's just basic stat changes. It might make you slightly better at one thing than another, but most of the time, you don't notice it. The Lords are the same as any other race pack. The Vampire Coast, the Wood Elves, the Tomb Kings, the Beastmen, one of the worst initially received DLCs in the history of the game, had the same quality of variation between the Legendary Lords. Yes, the base faction is better, I'm not arguing that, but between the different Legendary Lords in the faction, this is on par with the Beastmen. Now, is that a bad thing? Not necessarily, because the difference between the Legendary Lords has never been the problem. The problem with this DLC is we've gone from 4 to 3, and the quality of the 3 has not increased. The only differences in any of the other race packs has always been the Lords, starting location, and then the faction effects. And in the Chaos Dwarves, it is absolutely the same. I'm sick of being lied to, I don't know about you. Now the best part is, I'm certain that the original plan was for 4 Legendary Lords, and I'm happy to show you why. So, if we go to the Tower of Zar, in the top tier, you can confederate 3 other Chaos Dwarf factions. 2 of these are the 2 other Legendary Lords that you're not playing. One of these is a minor faction led by Gorth the Cruel. This is the same Gorth the Cruel who Ashtagoth is subservient to, and who is one of the most powerful sorcerer prophets in the entire faction. He's a pretty important guy, and certainly enough of a character that he could be a Legendary Lord and have a faction. Why else would you be able to confederate just a random minor faction? One minor faction. It makes sense if it was like the Empire, and you could confederate every minor faction, but it's one in particular, and one with a named Legendary Lord that is an actual character in the lore and isn't just some generic made-up name. I wholeheartedly believe that Gorth the Cruel was meant to be the 4th Legendary Lord in this DLC. And then from somewhere on high, they said, no, we're not doing that anymore. We're cutting it down to 3. And they're like, okay, we cut him off. And then instead of making it 2 at the top when it's been 3 for the rest of the time, let's just make it 3 at the top and just hope that no one really cares it's a minor faction. It makes 0 sense why this would ever be a thing unless he was cut and they just decided not to, or just couldn't be bothered to remove him from the top. It might just be that this tinfoil hat is damaging my brain, but that seems pretty damn suspicious to me. Now, a lot of people have made the argument that it doesn't matter that we're only getting 3 legendary lords because, the Vampire Coast, no one plays all of the lords. Most of the time, you play through 1 lord, maybe 2, maybe 3 if you're really desperate, but one of the lords always ends up being the one that you don't play. You've always got a Grand Hierophant Katep. No one really plays him because he's kind of got the worst start and doesn't have anything that's too unique. But I would argue to those people that removing choice and increasing cost is not a suitable fix for that problem. The fix for that problem is to make the lords more varied. Now, would I have minded if the 3 legendary lords came out and they were more varied, had some unique mechanics, maybe some unique heroes and stuff in between their own factions that the other ones can't get access to, so to unlock everything and enjoy them all, you get something unique in each campaign, so you're encouraged to play them all. Now, judging by the quality of the legendary hero, maybe my legendary hero unique to each faction would have been a good idea, because you'd have probably just got a guy with 1 unique skill, but I digress. Would that have made more sense than just having 3 of the same quality of legendary lords from previous DLCs instead of 4? There's no argument that I can possibly think of where that makes sense and that is acceptable to anyone, especially for an increased cost. There's no way it makes sense. It is just blatant greed. And again, we're talking about some suit who makes more money in a second than me or you can ever conceive in our entire life. I'm almost certain that like 90% of the people working on the game, the devs and everyone involved, is as passionate as us and as frustrated as us that these shitty business practices are seeping the way into our game that, while it has always been quite expensive, they're just taking the piss now, to be honest. Neither them nor us get pretty much any say in the decisions, and as consumers, there is only one thing that you can do. The only way to have influence over this and to make sure that your voice is heard, that you don't want this to happen again, is to not buy this DLC. It's a real shame because the faction is a lot of fun. The content is very enjoyable. I played like 3 campaigns, one of each of the different lords, and while they weren't particularly different, it was a lot of fun each time, and I wasn't really getting sick of it towards like the very end of the last playthrough when I was just kind of grinding to get the last couple of things for the guides. Hell, I even enjoyed playing multiplayer, and that might be because the Great Book of Grudges is the only person on Earth that's in my skill bracket for multiplayer, and believe me, it's not a very high skill bracket. But even with all of this in mind, I just can't recommend that anyone buys this DLC. If this is a success, and to be honest, I think it probably already is, it's been in the top sellers list since announced, and the spring sale's been on, so to be in the top sellers list of that, it's got to be pulling in some pretty serious bank. Anyway, if this is a success, this will very likely become the norm moving forward. That means every race pack, 3 lords, maybe a legendary hero if we're very good, and even if we are very good, it'll probably be a shit one anyway. I've reached out to CA and asked if this is going to be the way moving forward, like if it's going to be 3 legendary lords and that's it, that is the new standard moving forward with DLC Warhammer 3. At this point, I've received no comments. If I have received anything, I'll put it in the comments below, or I'll overlay it now when I'm speaking. But to this point, I've heard nothing back, so we can only assume. Well, we can only assume. I just cannot recommend this DLC, even if it was actually perfect, because it's just less content for more money, and it's just a terrible, disgusting business practice. Especially with everything going on in the world right now and the financial strain that is on basically everyone. This is just scummy behavior trying to exploit a very deprived, very passionate fan base. They know we've been waiting for new content for over 6 months. They know we've been waiting for the Chaos Dwarfs since Warhammer 3 was even conceived. They know we are desperate for something new. And they know that increasing the price whilst decreasing the content isn't going to dissuade enough people from buying it to matter to their bottom line. At the end of the day, it's your choice whether you think this is okay, but for me, it is honestly just disgusting. I can't really give this DLC a score since it wouldn't be a fair assessment, since I'm not recommending it based on corporate greed rather than the actual content, so you'll have to make do with that one. If you're going to pick this DLC up or not, that is entirely your choice at this point. I've said my piece. If you are picking it up, then consider checking out my campaign guide, which tells you everything you need to know about playing them in the campaign. If you're drawing a line in the sand, but you're still hungry for some more Warhammer 3 content, then why not check out this video here, the very best battle strategies.